All right, so I want to welcome everyone to our webinar, How to Keep Customers Longer and Maximize Lifetime Value. Thank you so much for joining us today. You likely already know how important it is to really focus on your existing customers in order to increase your profits. Even as you work hard to really nurture your ideal customers, there are still others that are going to be leaving your business, unfortunately. The truth is that many companies across different industries actually struggle to retain those valuable existing customers. And stats show that really improving customer retention by just 5% can boost profits by an average of 75%. And that's all because loyal customers, they spend up to 300% more than first-time buyers. Now, by understanding why customers leave your business in the first place and implementing the right communication strategy, you can keep your customers longer, and you can decrease the number of those leaving and increase the value that they bring to your business. So let's go ahead and take a look at our agenda and see more specifically what we're going to cover in today's webinar. We're going to start by talking about the term churn and what it is, and how to calculate your churn rate for your own business. Then we're going to talk about how to understand why your own customers are leaving. And lastly, we're going to talk about how to keep customers longer by improving your communication strategy. That's really what we're going to be focusing on today. Before we get into all of the details, allow me to introduce myself and my guest speaker for today. My name is Stephanie French, and I'm the content manager for webinars here at Constant Contact. I've been here for over 10 years now, really hard to believe, but I'm really happy to introduce our guest speaker, Dave Charest. He's the Director of Content Marketing. Do you want to say a quick hello, Dave?
Quick hello, Dave. Hi, everyone. Steph, thanks so much for having me as always, and it's been great to have you with us for so long. I'm right behind you, by the way.
Definitely, so excited. Great place to work. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Let's dive in to talk about what churn is and how to calculate it for your own business. And we'd like to start off with a poll today. So let me launch a poll here on your screen. We want to see where all of you lie with our topic today. Do you currently know the churn rate for your business? Maybe you might say, no, I don't know what churn is. That's okay. Maybe you'll say, no, I just don't have the resources to calculate it on a regular basis. Or maybe it is something you calculate on a regular basis. We'd really love to know where you all fall. We have a small 3% who voted, but so far 86% of people are saying no, they don't know what churn is. Well, glad you're joining the webinar today. About 20%, are saying no, I don't have the resources to calculate it on a regular basis. And then about 4% at the moment are saying yes, they calculate it regularly. So far, this is about what I've expected, Dave. How are you thinking about it?
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it's great to see that there are some people calculating it regularly, and a lot of times it really depends on the nature of your business, right? Like I think it's just another way to check in on the health of your business, and it's good to see that there are some people doing that, and hopefully after today you'll know whether or not it's a viable option for you. And I think regardless of whether or not you calculate your churn regularly, we're going to give you some tips that I'm a big believer in the idea of you focus on the right things and the right things happen. And so, we're going to talk a lot about communication and things that you can do to help solve for a lot of these problems that might be reasons why your customers are churning. So either way, I think you'll get something valuable out of this.
I agree. And yeah, no matter where you're at, we've got lots of great information planned here. So I closed the poll. We had 72% say no, they don't know what churn is. We're going to talk about that right after this. 23% ended up saying no, they don't have the resources to calculate it on a regular basis. And then 6% saying yes. So that is awesome. I want to thank you all so much for participating in the poll with us. So let's start by defining what churn actually is. Churn is defined as the number or percentage of people who leave your business in a period of time. And I think this makes sense to put into an actual business example. So let's pretend you all own a shoe store. You sell a variety of athletic shoes. For you, you know a churn is when a shoe wears out, but they don't come back to purchase a new pair. So if we think about this for the shoe store, we actually realize we have two different kinds of customers. We have people who wear the shoes to work out or throughout the day, and we'll call those people our average wearers. Now, for these people, we know that their shoes typically last 1.5 to 2 years, somewhere around that area. And then we also have athletes, which we know are a little bit harder on their shoes. So their shoes typically last less than a year. Once that amount of time has passed for each type of customer and they haven't made a purchase again, that would be when they've churned or we've lost that customer. Now, knowing the specifics for how long shoes last for each type of customer is really going to be important in determining the shoe store's own churn rate, as with all of our audience today. Dave, do you want to talk a little bit more about why this is so important for the shoe store and everyone here today?
Sure. So, as I was kind of mentioning before, right, this is just another way to really look at your business and check in on the health and see how things are going. Because, as you mentioned earlier in our session when we kicked off here today, is that, right, retention, keeping customers is going to be a lot more valuable to your business because you're not going to spend as much money to bring in those customers, right? They already know you, they have a relationship with you, they're likely to spend more. And so everything you do should really be focused around communicating and keeping those customers. And when you do that, you're going to see the health of your business, grow in ways that they should. And so, if you have a high churn rate, it starts to signal some things may be wrong with, or there might be indications of things may be wrong somewhere along the lines with your business. And it can be a number of things that we'll talk about here today. But one thing is it could just signal that you're not meeting or exceeding the expectations that your customer has with your organization and the products that you sell, right? And the another issue is that if customers are churning, sometimes that means they're likely to be unhappy, and unhappy customers oftentimes like to spread the word, unfortunately, more than people that are happy with your business. And so that's another thing to think about. And, as I mentioned, the retention piece of it, right, you're really stand a good chance. If you have low churn, you have a good chance of increasing those profits, and really focusing on this and focusing on that retention can really be a key strategy to how your business grows. And so even if you have a very small churn rate, let's say month over month, and again, it depends on the nature of your business, how you're going to calculate it, or how often you calculate it. But over time, let's say you're doing it month to month, like a 3% here and a 3% there at the end of the year, that all kind of adds up and can have a real impact on your business. And so again, just another way to think about it, but a really interesting and important way, because it really points to the health of what you have coming in and how you're growing from a revenue standpoint, for sure.
Absolutely. It's all tied to the positive side of it, which is actually retaining customers and where a lot of your revenue is going to be coming from, which is why you want to focus on these areas. Now, once you know those pieces of information of when a churn occurs for your own business, you're ready to sit down and calculate your churn rate. This is where we're going to calculate the percentage of people who have stopped buying from you in a certain time period. Dave mentioned a few of those periods like monthly, quarterly, yearly. But Dave, do you want to walk us through the formula and how we do calculate that churn rate?
Sure. So I'll self-admittedly say that I'm not a math person, but I think I can follow this. So hopefully for the non-math people out there as well, it's okay. Hopefully this is simple enough to kind of think through, right? But really what you're going to do is you're going to take the total number of customers lost within a particular period. Again, what period does that make sense for your business? And then, as Steph mentioned, sometimes that's monthly, quarterly, or even on an annual basis, right? And then you're going to divide that number by the total number of customers that you had at the beginning of that particular period. And that's going to give you what your churn rate is.
Seems simple enough. Now let's put that back into the perspective of the shoe store. So let's say we know we lost 4,500 customers during the month of February. And then we divide that by the 10,000 that we know we had at the beginning of the month. That gives us the number 0.45 for the monthly churn. Now, if we put that into perspective yearly, we can see what that would look like if we continue losing customers at that same rate each month. We can take that 0.45 and multiply it by 12, and that gives us a yearly churn rate of 5.4. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are out there wondering, and I see Tatiana asking about benchmarks. Let's talk about that because this is a great place for it. We know that average churn rates for different businesses typically fall between 5 and 7% annually. Dave, do you want to talk
Yeah.
about any details with that?
Yeah, sure. I was just going to say, a couple of things to keep in mind here, right? That like really the churn rate is going to be based on the nature of your business, how long you've been in business. It can also vary by industry. And so you want to take those things into account. But a general kind of rule of thumb to think about is that if your churn rate is under 5%, that's really a great place to be. And if you're over 10%, it's really something you might want to really think about. And you'll probably see that in other places of your business as well, even without calculating that churn rate. Again, this is just a good way to check in on that pulse of that. So just some areas to kind of think about there. But keep in mind, as with anything that we talk about, regardless of the topic, the real answer is it depends, and it depends on your business and your audience and your products and services.
I really like that point of how long you've been in business too, because a newer business might actually churn at a higher rate just because, you're still kind of working things out and figuring what works for your business and your audience and all of that. All right, so at this point, you all should know why churn is an important step to keep tabs on for your business. When it comes to calculating your own churn rate, you really want to have a good understanding first of when a churn occurs for your business. And it's important to keep in mind that you might have different types of customers, just like with the shoe store. And then you're going to want to calculate your churn rate, which calculates the rate based on how many customers leave in a certain time period. At that point, you'll really be able to start to understand if your churn is average in that 5 to 7% range so that you can start to figure out what your next steps are. Also, I really want to encourage you to keep tabs on your churn rate on a monthly, quarterly, and even annual basis. And the reason being because if you have a higher churn rate in, let's say, a particular month, that might mean that something specific has happened in your business, something with your purchase flow online, or maybe even something externally that's causing people to leave that you might be able to address. So all of that information really leads us into this next section because it's important to also understand why your customers are leaving. So first I want to mention that some customers may simply leave because of a bad product. And unfortunately, there's nothing you can do from a marketing perspective to fix a bad product. But if you do have a good product, let's talk about some of these areas that we see on the screen, some of the common reasons that people leave. First up is bad customer service. We know that 68% of customers leave because they're upset with the treatment they receive from a company. And this could also come down to the fact that they feel they have unmet expectations in doing business with you. Maybe they didn't receive their product fast enough or whatever the case may be. And as Dave was saying, they're typically going to tell others when they've had that bad experience. One stat I've seen says that they tell anywhere from 9 to 15 people about their experience. That's probably just because things are amplified on the internet in today's world. Another common reason is that they don't feel they get enough value from your company, and that can be throughout the entire customer experience. Here, I'm not just talking about price when we're talking about value. 55% of customers would actually pay extra in order to guarantee better services instead of just opting for a lower price option. And this comes down to them receiving helpful information and support throughout their entire journey as a customer. We'll address that a little bit later on. Now, it may also come down to them receiving poor quality communications from you. 35% of people will unsubscribe from emails because they receive too frequent communications. And one thing I want to tell you is that frequency and relevancy, they work together and play a huge role in this. Again, something we'll dive into more later. Lastly, they might simply leave you because they have no brand loyalty. They view you and even your competitors as interchangeable. They may feel that there is no differentiation between what you offer and what your competitors offer. And that is when price starts to become a factor. Now, in the next section, like I said, we're going to be talking about how to keep those people longer for each of these 4 common reasons. But for now, I really want to focus on understanding why your own customers are leaving you. Dave, do you want to walk us through some strategies to think about in terms of finding out why?
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to mention too, just a lot of really great things that you shared there and really puts in perspective, particularly now when there are so many opportunities and ways for people to buy and ways for people to shop, that really differentiating yourself with some of those things that you mentioned in the last slide is so important. And you can start to see already how like that helps you think about those things. And so, when we're talking about some of these things that you're talking about here, sometimes it's as simple as asking people, right? Don't be afraid to survey your existing customers. Don't be afraid to try to find out from those customers that, if they're leaving you or if they canceled something or returned something. Like, don't be afraid to reach out and find out what the problem is, because that's part of the solution, right? You can't solve something when you don't know it's a problem. And so figuring those things out really helps you start to understand where you might need to make some modifications. And so, feel free to use the survey to find out things in terms of just rating their level of satisfaction with your company or doing business with you. You can ask them if they're likely to recommend you to a friend or colleague. And then you can even have a place, and this is one of my favorite things to do, is really have a place for people to make suggestions and improvements of things they'd like to see. I mean, we do this at the end of every webinar, right? When you leave today, you're going to get a survey from us that's a quick, like, let us know, what you thought of the session, but then also tell us suggestions, improvements, or other things that you'd like to see so we can make those adjustments, because we want you coming back, we want you learning with us, right? And so it's really important to keep an eye on this stuff all the time and think about those opportunities that you have after an interaction with your business, like a purchase or even just somebody talking to somebody on the phone. I mean, you see this all the time, right? Is it okay if we send you a survey after you've had a call with somebody, or I'm thinking of like the TV company or the cable company, like something like that, right? Because they know if you're satisfied, there's less of a chance that you're no longer going to be a customer. So that's why it's important to do that. And a simple way to do that is to think about using a survey and asking for that information that you need.
Survey is such a great tool for so many things in business. Now, if you want to learn more about creating an effective survey for this purpose, we have a really great blog post that we'll have Rachel, who's helping behind the scenes, share in the chat window. And I wanted to address Holly's question. Holly asks, when you say leaving, do you mean unsubscribing? Yes and no, they can actually be connected, but here when we're talking about churn, we're just meaning they're leaving your business and not making another purchase with you. There are instances where someone just may unsubscribe from your mailing list, but they'll still come back and do business with you. The thing is, they're not going to be receiving those communications that might prompt them to do that.
But Steph, just to add to that, right, if you're looking at the efficiency of your email list, you could think of looking at the churn, right? Because if you have people, if you're trying to grow your list and you have, like, there's a normal amount of churn that you have, but if you have a high rate of people unsubscribing, that could indicate, oh, maybe there's just issues with my communication in general, which is obviously what we're talking about here today. So it can really be applied to any of those things where you're gaining and losing people.
Great point. All right, now the other thing I want to point out is that online reviews are important to pay attention to here as well. So I'm going to put all of your hands down, and I'd really like you to raise your hand in that GoToWebinar control panel if you're currently collecting reviews online. Go ahead and raise your hand for me. I see Brett, Ashlyn. Give everyone a few more minutes. Just want to see how many people are currently collecting online reviews. I see Jess, Aaron, Ashley, Jennifer. All right, so I would probably say a quarter of the people who are here today. Now, if you're not intentionally collecting reviews online, you may still be getting reviews out there about your business. What I want to encourage you to do, go out there and search for your business name in Google. You might see that people have already left you reviews on different sites about your business. The thing is, you want to claim listings so that you can be alerted when someone leaves a review for you. And most businesses should be claiming a listing on Google, Facebook, and Yelp. And then there's going to be some more specific ones. We'll share a link in the chat window for your specific type of business if you want to learn more. But the thing I also want to point out here is that the absence of online reviews can actually hurt you more than just simply receiving negative reviews, which is sometimes a hesitation when it comes to this part.
Yeah, Steph, you bring up a good point, right? It's like, this is the world we live in now, right? Where people are taking to the internet and they're writing reviews about places. They're using those sites like Yelp and, Google reviews and all of that. And debatable on whether it's good or bad in some instances. But I think what's not debatable is if you don't address them, right? Whether they are good or bad, right? And so sometimes these can be really eye-opening to pay attention to, right? Because other people can see those reviews and they're in a public space. And so you want to make sure that you are at least responding to them, because oftentimes people are looking for, as a business, how do you handle those situations, right? And this gets back to customer service. This gets back to how you communicate. This gets back to how you're different from your competitors. And so people are paying attention. And I know a lot of times people get really worried about, somebody leaves a negative review, is this really going to hurt my business, and that type of thing. And a lot of times people can tell the difference between someone being reasonable or being unreasonable. And I think what really we're looking for is, what is your interaction with that person as the business? Are you trying to rectify the solution, and are you're trying to make it right? And a lot of times, if it's a normal situation, you can turn people around, and those people will change their review based on something that you've done, because maybe you just weren't aware that it was happening, and this is why you have to pay attention to the stuff going on. And then there are other situations where people just want to make a stink, and like I said, a lot of times people can look at that and see the difference between somebody that's got a legitimate claim and somebody that's really just causing a fuss for the sake of it. And so it's just more about, again, what is that? How do you engage with those reviews and those interactions, and how do you approach it as a business?
I know that's something I look at too. If I see a negative review, I want to see, okay, things do happen and sometimes things don't go right. Something happens, with shipping or something like that they don't have a lot of control over, but they're apologizing, saying they're sorry and trying to rectify the situation. I'm more likely to actually do business with them. And even if I'm an existing customer, I'm going to be more likely to go back and do business with them because I know they value customer support. So at this point, you've got some great things to think about for understanding why your customers may be leaving you. Remember, you can use this survey, as Dave was saying, to really gain insights from your customers. Ask a variety of questions to gain insight on factors of why they decided not to purchase again, the pricing, or the features and things like that. And also make sure you're asking for feedback so that you can make those improvements. Online reviews also, don't forget about how important those are for a lot of different reasons. As Dave was saying, you're going to want to respond to all of the reviews, even those negative ones. Try to provide some assistance to them and show other people that you do in fact care. You're also going to want to keep a pulse on customer satisfaction throughout the year. Now that means you might send a survey or ask for feedback after each visit to your store, or send a survey periodically to see how you're doing with your customers. By doing this, you can determine any internal or external factors that might be affecting the experience with your customers and try to fix it. All right, so at this point, you've got a good foundation for understanding your churn rate and why your customers are leaving. Let's talk about keeping them longer, and here we're really focusing on the communication strategy. Now, what I want to note here is that we are going to be talking about some fundamentals of email marketing. And no matter how long you've been doing it or where you're at in your strategy, these things are still so very much important. And if you find something that isn't simply working for you, it's important to just simply tweak something and see if that has an effect. Don't just seek out the next trendy thing or the next shiny object, as I like to put it. So let's go back to those 4 common reasons to see what you can do to reduce churn for each of those. Dave, do you want to walk us through that?
Yeah, sure. So, a big thing that we're going to talk about, and across any of these common reasons, right? It's really about, a lot of times, just getting the right message at the right time to the right people, right? And making sure that you're doing those things. And so when we think about customer service, bad customer service, right? It's really about making sure that, one, that your communications with them are feeling personalized, right? Like people feel engaged and appreciated with your business. It gives the impression, at least, that you're paying attention to them as individuals and as customers, and paying attention to what they want, right? And oftentimes this comes down to what their expectations are with you as a business. And if you can, the phrase, right, under promise and over deliver, if you can provide somebody with a really great customer experience, really, it's amazing how much that stands out today, right? Because unfortunately, in many instances, the bar is set so low that when you have this great customer experience with the business, like, I know I get like excited, like, whoa, that was really great. I've had some things recently that have been happening personally where I've been dealing with, people on the phones and getting people to call, and things getting situated in a way that I'm like, okay, that wasn't a hassle, right? Like, that was something really good. And then I think another thing to think about from a customer experience perspective is just being transparent and kind of keeping people updated. You know, I recently had a situation where I purchased something I've been waiting for a while. I knew the date in the back of my mind when it was supposed, because it was like a pre-order and I knew when it was supposed to come, but I hadn't heard anything from this business. And I actually contacted them to find out about the status of the order, and they were like, oh, it was held back, and so it's going to be coming. And so now imagine if they were transparent with what was happening there and reached out to me to let me know, like, hey, just wanted to let you know, I know you're excited to get your product. I know you're excited about this thing. It's backed up a week, so this is going to settle the timeline, but we're going to upgrade the shipping to make sure you get it when you were supposed to get it, right? Like, whoa, that's a really great moment and a great experience in terms of a customer experience, right? No customer service. And so it's about doing things like that really, how you communicate with people, that make a big difference. Now, another thing here is not enough value. And so value means a couple of things, right? That can mean value that they receive when they, like in terms of a discount or something like that, but it can also mean just how they feel in terms of what they're receiving from you. And so if you think about it in the sense of like, if all they're getting from you is, you know, emails for, let's say, one product, when they're actually not interested in that product, they're interested in this other category of products, right? So the emails that you get from you don't have any meaning to them. They don't appreciate those emails. Or if they are not receiving anything that helps them use something that they've purchased for you, again, it's not helping them. They're not getting any value from the message that you're sending to them. I had one company that I was doing business with that I actually purchased. It was like a suite of products that they had. I actually purchased all of those products. And then I kept getting emails from them about buying more of those products. Well, I have them all. I'm not going to buy them, right? And so I didn't need those. But what I would have appreciated, right, what would have given me some value was information on how to use these products, right? Maybe some ways other customers are using the products, things like that. And so you really want to think about, again, beyond the transactional, what is that whole experience like, and how can you continually provide value to people, and how you're communicating with them. Another thing is just, right, these are kind of tied together, but that idea of just poor quality communications, you really need to think as much as possible, right? We always talk about this idea of like, you've got this big group of people on your list. You want to narrow those lists down to move people into buckets where they're have similar interests or some type of way that makes sense for your business, so you can communicate with them more specifically, and so those communications feel relevant to them. And you know, you mentioned earlier on, Steph, the idea of people feel like they're getting in terms of frequency too many messages. And you made a point of mentioning, and this is really important to hear, it's not too many messages. What it is too many irrelevant messages, right? Because if you're going to send me messages that I enjoy, look forward to getting, and that are helpful and adding the value, and you know, you're doing it in a good way that communicates what you're trying to get across, well, you can email me every day if that made sense, right? And so it's really just, you know, thinking about the quality of the communications that you're sending and how you can get more specificity and relevance to the people that you're talking to. So those are some things that I would think about across at least those three categories.
Yeah, so that brings up a good question we get all the time, which is frequency. You're talking about those helpful emails and those promotional emails, which really you need a variety of different kinds. So let's address that question. And it is going to depend on a variety of factors. Do you want to walk us through that?
Yeah, so as we were saying, right, it really is different for every business. And so a couple of things that you want to think through, though, to understand is, one, just off the bat, typically people in the e-commerce industry can probably send a little bit more frequently, right? Because there's a little bit more of a transactional nature there, and quite frankly, the more you send, the more you end up selling, right? But it's, again, managing when you send the right messages at the right times and all of that. So you're going to want to consider your audience, for one, right? Who are the people on your list, and what are your products and services, the nature of your business, and you know, who are the people that are buying. Those two combined help you kind of set a path for, all right, how often can we communicate with somebody? Also, you want to think about what are the expectations that you set with people when they've joined your email list. And so, right, you know, a simple way to think about it is, if you said, hey, you know, I would like to give you 20% off, and I'm going to email you every day with a tip about something and maybe some special offers. If somebody puts their email address into that, What are they expecting? And I know you know the answer, Steph, right? They're expecting to get an email from you every day because that's the expectation that you set. Similarly, if you said, I'm going to send you a monthly email and maybe an occasional special offer here and there, again, the expectation is you're going to get something monthly. And so you want to think about those things when you're considering how often you should be sending to people. Now, the other thing to mention is that typically when you are doing something that we would deem a promotional email, right? Something that's about something that has some type of time sensitivity to it or an expiration date. So whether that's a sale or an event, whatever the case may be, oftentimes people kind of need a few kind of kicks in the pants to take action on those things. And so, a simple thing that we like to say is like, think about sending at least a series of 3 emails, right? How you execute on that is really, again, using those factors that we already talked about and how to do that. But at the very least, you're thinking about announcing what that offer is. You want to remind them about that thing, and then you want to make sure that they know this is their last chance to take up on that offer. Lastly, I will say, if you're going to do anything, and you're not going to do any of the specificity or the segmentation or things like that that we're talking about here today, at the very least, if you're going to send to your list of people, try to send at least once a month, because that's better than not sending at all or not having some type of consistency. So at the very least, you'll be keeping your business top of mind, and you'll see some results from that, and that's important. But if we want to get to those next levels, that's the stuff we'll talk about next.
Definitely. And I just want to go back to that send at least once a month suggestion there, because that's very important. There have been many businesses where I've given them my email address, nothing for months. And then all of a sudden I receive an email from them, and I have probably just forgotten who they are and that I gave them my email address. And I'm like, how'd they get my email address? So I mark them as spam or unsubscribe. And that's not something we want to happen. So you want to send on that regular basis so they remember you and you do stay top of mind.
Yeah, and I apologize, Steph. I did forget to mention, the great thing about email marketing, right, is you do have some reporting that you can look at. And so you can pay attention to some of the things that are happening, right? You can take a look at your open rates. You can take a look at your click-through rates. I would say maybe let's focus on open rates, because that's a start of figuring out, like, are people actually opening those emails, right? But then you can also take a look at that unsubscribe rate. And so we talked about how that could be another way to look at not churn from a customer perspective, but churn from a list growth perspective, right? And so you'll want to look at those things as well, just to give you an indication of where you're at. Constant contact, if you search constant contact average open rates, you'll see some information that we have based on our customers within different industries. So you can kind of see, if you're wondering, all right, how am I doing? It's a good place to start in terms of like what the benchmarks are for particular industries. But I would say the important thing to think about there is, what you're trying to do is look at your own personal business benchmarks. So those are a guidepost to say, like, all right, maybe I should be in this range if you're not, but wherever you are, you're looking to improve on what you're doing. So compare yourself to yourself and not necessarily those other people. But again, just to give you an idea.
And another thing to look at in those unsubscribe reports as well is the comments. When you dive in, you'll be able to see what people have said or the option they chose when they did unsubscribe and why. So let's go back to that 4th common reason, which is no brand loyalty. What are some tips for growing a more loyal base?
Yeah, so this is kind of like a culmination of all of these things that we've been talking about up until now, right? Where really you have the opportunity in how you communicate with people and how you provide customer service and how you provide value and how you do all of these things, really builds up to how people feel about your business. And really that's what we're talking about when we're talking about brand loyalty, right? People want to feel good about the businesses that they do business with, and they want to feel connected to them. And so it comes down to, again, we've talked about the commoditization of so many products and services today, that there's not a lot different from them. But what makes it different is the brand aspect of it and how you're differentiating from your competitors. And if you're giving them reasons to choose you because they value what they're getting from you. And so that's really important to build this kind of loyal base of customers, right? And nurturing those relationships with them. The other thing to just think about is, proactively, how can you go in and think about what that customer journey or experience is with you, right? Like, I would recommend people go visit your website and pretend you're a customer, right? Like, what does that process look like if you were to add something to your shopping cart if you're selling online? What does that process look like if I want to find out what hours that you're open on a Tuesday, right? Like, all of those things, believe it or not, lead to whether or not somebody wants to do business with you. And so it's important to think about that. We'll talk about some ideas to really provide more information that adds value in a bit, but once you start really, nurturing and building those relationships, these people start to become advocates for you because they feel connected to you, and often leads to having people talking about your business in a positive way, which again brings more people to your door. And I think that's really important. And so, really think about those ways that you can do things like that. I mean, even if you have these really great customers that are I would call them like your VIP customers, right? What are some ways that you can create those rewards or loyalty programs maybe that, get more people talking about you, get them coming back and telling others about you is what we're really talking about here at the end of the day.
Some great suggestions there, especially the rewards or loyalty program, because those happy people, they're more likely to tell their friends about their positive experience with you. Now, one of the biggest takeaways that I want to point out here is personalization. Personalization is key. It's key in keeping customers around longer and ultimately increasing their lifetime value to your business. The thing I want to point out with personalization is that it really is so much more than just simply adding their name to the email. It's about them receiving information that's going to be relevant to them, as Dave was just talking about in a lot of those categories. This is where this whole idea of segmentation really comes into play. By splitting your list into smaller groups of like contacts, you're going to be able to create and send relevant content. It really is one of the most effective ways to retain customers and improve your overall email results. And that ultimately helps you to sell more. Now, overall, you're going to want to have segments that really make sense for your customers and your business. You'll want to think about what's the information that makes products, services, and content more interesting to your subscribers. You might segment them based on data that you know about them, maybe the products or services they've purchased, or even the things they've shown interest in just by simply clicking a link in your email. What are some types of segments you think we should focus on here, Dave?
Yeah, so when we're just talking about churn specifically, right? So obviously we've talked a lot about a really great number of things and segmentation and how important that is. But when you start looking at, for example, at-risk customers or people that have already churned, and even your most valuable customers, you can start to figure out when you can identify who those people are by digging into the data and looking at the things that are going on. How you communicate with those people becomes very different, right? And so, right, like a simple way to think about maybe like at risk could be they're at risk because they, might not be ready to buy yet. They're not in that frame of mind, right? And so if you're trying to keep communicating with them about buying, well, you run the risk of them saying like, look, I'm not interested in this. I'm just going to unsubscribe from this list. And then now you've lost that person in terms of being able to influence their buying decisions with email, right? And so you want to communicate with them maybe a little bit differently than you would somebody that is like, oh, buying stuff left and right, right? Like they're ready to go. They're looking for, a coupon, or they're looking to be said like, hey, come check out this thing. And so you really want to think about how you're communicating with those people by identifying what bucket that they may be in. And a lot of that comes down from really going through the data, like looking at tying that together with how they're engaging with your emails, when they've purchased something, when they haven't, and really looking at what they're doing on your website. And so all of that stuff kind of comes together to give you an idea of, all right, what do I need to do with these people?
Great information. Definitely focus on those three types of or groups of customers: at risk, churned, and most valuable for this particular topic today. Now, for those of you who want to learn more about segmenting your list and using the tools in Constant Contact, we've got another great webinar coming up next week, and we'll share a link to that to register for that upcoming session in the chat window. Now, what are some types of emails that you would recommend our audience would want to send to each of those three groups: churned, at risk, and most valuable?
Yeah, so I was starting to touch on this a little bit here, but at-risk customers, right? Like they're maybe better off with some broader type messaging. And so you don't necessarily want to, you know, like you want to be like, hey, I know you might leave, so I wanted to, you don't want to signal that they're, at risk, but you want to maybe thanks for being a customer, provide them some unique or interesting content along with an incentive maybe to get them to do something, right? So start thinking about, all right, these people might go, what can we do to stop that from happening, right? So think of some things there. When you're thinking about those people that have churned already, you often hear the term win back campaign, and it's not necessarily about getting one more conversion out of that customer, but rather, providing a really great buying experience so that they send more in the future. And so this is where, this could be an area where you want to send that survey that we mentioned before to find out some things about that's going on. You could even think about like missing you type messages, or, we'd love to have you back, like those types of languages to include with maybe an incentive if they're the right people that would respond to some type of language around that. And then, thinking about the next things, right? Stuff like, I don't know, what else you got here for us?
Yeah, so what I want to mention for these two groups of customers, at risk and churned, is after they make a purchase, really focus on these groups because you can send a follow-up message. Dave mentioned the survey. This is a great place to do that after you've re-engaged these people, gotten them to make a purchase. You can also send additional information that's going to increase their lifetime value with you. More product information, how the product works, how to use the product, and even product recommendations. And I think you already mentioned an incentive. And also, I like the idea of onboarding information, which I'll touch on in just a little bit. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that most valuable customer group and what we should send to them?
Yeah, like I said, these are your rock stars, right? These are the people that love your business. These are people that are, buying from you frequently, coming back to you when it's time to do that. And so you don't want to forget about them, of course, right? Because these are the people that are really, taking up the slack, for lack of a better term, right? And so it really comes down to, again, treating them well as you would with any customer, hopefully, right? But treating them well, making them feel special, and these are the people that you may want to reach out to ask for reviews, right? You want to get feedback from them because they'll often highlight to you what they really love about your business, right? And then that signals to you the things that you can highlight to others that people like them will also like about your business. And so another thing to think about is, do you make them feel part of this like special group? Do you do special things for them? Do you give them sneak peeks into maybe products or services that you have coming up? Do you send them content you don't send to other people so they have this kind of insider feel with your business? And so those are just some things to think about when you're looking at these different groups of people.
I love that part about exclusivity and making them feel special and letting them know how valuable they are to your business. Now, earlier we've talked about nurturing relationships to build a more loyal base. And really everything we've talked about up until this point is going to have an impact for nurturing relationships and keeping them with you. And I want to point out that automation can and should be playing a role in your communication strategy. One, because you can save time, and two, because you can reach people at the right time with relevant messages after they take a specific action with you or after they've joined your email list, for example. Now, one of the most common ways to use a series of automated emails is to welcome people to your business. After someone signs up, it can be a good idea to follow up on anything you might have enticed them to sign up with. And then in another email later on, you could invite them to connect with you. That might mean, hey, follow us on our Facebook page or follow us on Twitter, or here is how you can get in touch with us at our support center if you have questions or anything like that. I like this because it's helping you to start that relationship off on the right foot. Now, some other ways that you might think about building relationships with your audience include an onboarding series. I think Dave or I briefly mentioned it a bit earlier, but take some time in a few different emails to set them up and help them be successful with your product or service and educate them along the way. Email one might look like, hey, thanks for making a purchase. Here's some getting started information or the first thing you want to do. Email two might look like an additional education information. It could be maybe a short tutorial video or step-by-step information. And then in the third email is where you could ask for feedback. I like this because you're taking the time to set them up to be successful with your business. When you've done that, they're more likely to be happy. And when you ask for that feedback or review, you're more likely to get a positive review online, which is great. Now, if they haven't purchased from you in a while, or maybe you find them unengaged, you could create a series of emails that maybe feature your best content. Show them why you're the expert in your business, or maybe even feature your best-selling products and how they solve your audience's problem. You might choose maybe 3 different emails and 3 related pieces of content over each of those emails. And remember, even if you're using automation, the information should still be relevant, especially when we're talking about the groups we're talking about today: at risk, churned, and your most valuable customers. Things like these can certainly help to nurture those relationships. Another idea here is to make people feel special with birthday and anniversary emails. Birthday emails are a great way to celebrate with your customers. You might include a piece of exclusive content, especially if they're your VIPs. It could be a coupon, a free item, or a complimentary service. And then for the anniversary emails, that's this example we see here on the right. It's not just about a wedding anniversary, but some sort of milestone they have with your business. If you're a nonprofit, that could be a donor anniversary they have with you, just reminding them about it, and that might pique them to come back and make another donation. It could be a membership anniversary, a renewal notice, or even some sort of re-engagement letter that encourages them to come back and do business with you again.
Yeah, this is all really great stuff that you're talking about here, and you know, it's stuff you'll hear us talking about a lot, right? Because it's really important to do these things, and they can make a big difference and have a big impact on your business. And so, you know, everything that we've really talked about here today is you know, doable manually, right? It's about creating different segments of people, and when you do that, it allows you to send the most relevant information to those people, or at least make those guesses, right? And so, but there are still kind of those tiny differences that even people within those groups have, and those that you create. And so some might be more likely to churn versus someone who takes an action that shows they're more likely to make a purchase. And really, the pinnacle of where you want to get to is this idea of sending on an individual level, so you can retain more customers and sell even more. And as I mentioned, you're really making educated guesses, and in terms of the right groups and the segments. And I do want to mention something, particularly to our folks that are in the e-commerce industry, right? And the reason it's really specific to them is because usually there's a lot more information, right? You have a lot more information in terms of products and services. You're probably sending a little bit more frequently. You have more people and more data to kind of pull together that, you know, combines with what's happening in terms of actual purchases and what's happening in terms of like what people are doing on your website and that type of thing. And so I just want to talk a little bit here about how, if you add a layer of artificial intelligence and like predictive analytics, and so really it's something that goes in and looks at all the data that you've collected and analyzes that to then start to put people in these buckets that, you know, it's looking at behavioral, it's looking at demographics, it's looking at all of this stuff, and then they can actually start to predict what buckets these people are in and the types of messages that you should be sending to people. And we have a new package called Ecommerce Pro. It's Constant Context Ecommerce Pro that uses that stuff to analyze, take the guesswork out of the data that you have, and helps you reduce churn by allowing you to really live into that idea of sending the right message to the right person at the right time in a frequency that makes sense to them. And really, it's all predicated on a lot of the things that we've talked about here today in terms of like those fundamentals that you keep mentioning, Steph. And really, the more you can tie into the fundamentals, the better you're going to do. And you're adding a layer here that just allows you to sell more in more time, really. So maybe if we take a look at like some of the information that you could get on the next slide, Steph, here, right? Like really what we're seeing here is that your predictive analytics kind of show you things, right? It shows you the lifetime value of a customer. It shows you what their predicted value is. It shows you what stage that they're in. And it shows you things that it makes product recommendations based on what you have. It helps you understand the best time of day to send to people. And so it's really helps you predict all of this stuff. And then using whatever stage that they're in, it's then going to automate what message that you should be sending to them, so that, you know, if you have people that may be at a risk of leaving, it may start with that broader messaging or do something to keep them involved with your business. And if you have people that maybe respond well to incentives, it might try to send an incentive that makes sense for a product or service that they're going to like. And so it's really interesting, and having been in this industry for a while now, this is like I said, the pinnacle of where you want to get to, right? This idea of sending the right message to the right person, not a group of people, the person at the right time, and treating them as individuals. I think it gets me excited just talking about it, because it's something that is now available, and it's, you know, predicting things at, you know, over 90% accuracy, which is really great. So we'll give you a link here for those of you on the line that are in the e-commerce industry, so you can check that out and maybe request a demo to see if that's right for you. But exciting stuff.
Definitely really cool technology. And Nina, fill out that form that's going to be in the chat window from Rachel, and that's how you can see how you can add a layer and use the AI, because we have a whole new package with this really cool technology. All right, so as we start to wrap up today, just remember, you want to spend some time calculating your churn rate on a regular basis, and use those surveys and reviews to find out why people are leaving or unhappy with your company. And when it comes down to really creating a strategy to retain more customers and keep them longer, remember, I can't stress enough how much personalization is going to be key for you. Begin by segmenting your list into smaller, relevant groups that make sense for your business. Having those groups is going to allow you to send that relevant information. In particular, you're going to want to win back your at-risk and your churned customers, and make your most valuable customers feel special and like they're part of an exclusive group. And lastly, if you're in e-commerce, you can let AI do the work for you, as Dave was saying. Let AI determine who those at-risk and churn customers are, so that you can send the right messages to the right people on that individual level. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the package, Dave?
Yeah, just one last plug, right? Constant Contact's e-commerce pro. If you're in e-commerce, you're selling online, this can really help you sell more in less time. And so I think Rachel has shared the link there. Take a look at that form, fill that out, see if you qualify. You can get yourself a demo of this and see how it can work for your business specifically. But it's about marrying artificial intelligence that learns and understands and optimizes what you're doing, and marrying that with automation to send the right messages at the right time, and really do that by segmenting people at an individual level. That allows you to do a lot of this stuff and take the guesswork out of it. And many people don't reach this level because it is labor intensive, right? You have to have the time to be able to dig into the analytics and figure out who those people are and really get nuanced with what you're doing. And this helps you solve for a lot of that without that time investment, other than getting things set up, right? So definitely worth checking that out.
Yeah, definitely time saving for sure. Now, if you're not in e-commerce, Constant Contact has many tools to help you with your small business, from websites, online stores, to email, social media, and so much more to help you along the way. If you don't already have an account, you can sign up for a free trial. Again, Rachel will put that link in the chat window. We're going to get to our Q&A session here, but just a quick note: when we end the webinar today, a survey is going to pop up, as Dave mentioned before. And please just take a minute or two to answer those 2 simple questions and let us know what you thought about the webinar today. All right, Dave, I know I've seen a lot of great questions coming in. So Joanne asks, can you do a churn rate example using a service industry where customers participate on a regular basis? Theirs is a gymnastics center.
Yeah, sure. So I think, you know, what you'd want to think about doing here is looking at, so what is the pay schedule for these people, right? Are they paying on a monthly basis? And so you may want to look month to month. Are you keeping customers, or are people leaving, right? And so I think that would be a way to think about that. Or if it's different, if they're paying, you know, quarterly, or they're paying by the year, again, it's kind of married to how they're paying you and when you can expect to receive that money coming in, versus, you know, if you're losing people and they're not making those payments. Sorry, something flew by my screen here for a second. I'm not freaking out, I promise. So I would think about, you know, what does the payment schedule look like, and are you keeping those people month to month, or are you losing people along the way?
That's a great way to think about it there, especially for probably anybody in the service industry, because that formula is still going to be the same no matter what industry you're in. So this next question is, which period can I consider as the beginning of the business? Is it the first month, first 3 months, 6 months, or even a year?
So this is another one that's kind of hard to answer without knowing the specifics of the business. But I would say if you're just getting started, you're probably going to be looking at some things a little bit more frequently. And so, I think you're going to be looking at all of these things when you're just starting, like what's happening in my first month, what's happening in my second month, what's happening in the 3 months, right? And so, and then based on where you are and as things start to be a little bit more regular with your business, then it's understanding what is the right frequency to be looking at those things and understand what's best for you and the industry and the customers that you have. But I think in the beginning, probably yes, quite frequently you want to, see what's happening.
Great. Next question is from Nancy. Does churn ever connect with new clients coming in?
Well, I mean, yes, in some way, right? Like I think because what you're doing is as you're growing that base, you're looking from month to month. And so if you gained customers in a month, you see that is reflected in that next month when you're looking at that, right? Because you're starting, okay, now this month I have this many customers and then this many people have left, right? And so yes, over time as you're doing that, it's going to start to it's going to play into that factor in that equation that we mentioned earlier.
Great. Next question comes from Jerry. Do you provide a survey template or option with your service? Yes, we do have a survey option. If you've been around for a while, you'll find that if you go to create, the create button on your campaigns tab, and also we've got a new survey tool that I think we're testing out in beta. So some of you may have access to that. If you've been around a while and you were wondering about that, that's definitely something to keep in mind.
Yeah,
But
yeah, Steph,
definitely.
I'll just add real quick that I think, yeah, we have some of those templates in there. And then we also have some blog posts that help you think through how you would want to survey people. So maybe if somebody can, find those and maybe share a link out to everybody, that on our blog, we have tons of information that can help you think through a lot of that stuff.
Yes, our team puts together tons of really great information to help you all. Let's see. Jen asks, if my clients unsubscribe, I was told not to contact them. Why?
So this is great. So yeah, because if somebody unsubscribes, they're saying essentially don't contact me. At least that they're telling you they don't want to be contacted that way. And so one of the ways to find out some information from these people is in your constant contact account. You can actually ask for feedback when people unsubscribe, and they can give you a reason. And this is why I tend to, unless it's extremely high, I tell people not really to worry too much about those unsubscribes because some of it is normal. But oftentimes when you go and you look at the reasons why people are unsubscribing, again, it depends on your business and all of that and what you're doing. But oftentimes it's just because they've changed jobs, they're not living in a specific location anymore, and it really has nothing to do with the health of your business. And so, but this can be a good reason as to, when people give you things that do speak to specific things, it's stuff that you can, all right, is this something I'm hearing over and over again? Is this something that I need to address, right? And so it gives you, it's a way to get that feedback, but without necessarily contacting them directly through email because they've unsubscribed and they don't want you to contact them that way.
Great point. Jacqueline asks, what is the best software to collect reviews? I've already claimed my business on Google. Any other place?
Yeah, for sure. So, and Steph, feel free to jump in here, but I think, really, again, it depends on the nature of your business. Yelp is a big one. Google My Business, of course, is really important because a lot of times those reviews show up in the in the search results, right? So if people are searching for your business, they'll see those reviews right away. Facebook can be another big one because oftentimes people will talk about their businesses and leave reviews for them on their Facebook pages. And then I would say if there's anything specific to your industry, I might recommend someone shares a link out to the download. We have a guide out there that's about making sense of online marketing, and we have a general version of that, but we also have some specific industry versions of that as well that can help you find some of those things that may be important. For example, real estate, right? You might want to think about Zillow and House and things like that. Those may be places you want to be investing time to get reviews and things like that there as well.
Yeah, they definitely can vary by different industries, but for most businesses, they can fit into those big three, Yelp, Facebook, and Google for sure. Now, Jerry's question, I believe, is pertaining to the online review conversation we had. What do you
Yeah.
suggest for an unhappy customer?
So I think the big thing here, as we may have touched on a bit, is that you need to engage, right? You can't just ignore it, because that doesn't make it go away, right? It's there. And I think what you can do is empathize, right? And try to figure out what went wrong, right? Is there something that you can do to rectify the situation in the eyes of that customer that will basically turn them around, right? Will that change? Because oftentimes people just want to be heard, and if they feel like they're not being heard, that's when they complain. Or sometimes that just might be oftentimes it's something simple that can be handled by just reaching out and saying like, hey, we're really sorry that happened. What can we do to fix it? Or if they're detailed, as oftentimes people are, like, oh, that happened. Here, well, we're going to DM you and we're going to send you this information so we can get this in direct message, right? Oftentimes you want to try to take that conversation, private if you can, and then and hopefully, encourage people, if we rectify the situation, to update that review with what happened, because again, people are looking to see how you're responding to those situations. So something to think about there.
Definitely. And I would just add that, there are some people, it feels like, in the world that probably will never be happy. And, if someone is out there and they're seeming a little bit unreasonable in that review, as long as you're responding, you're being cordial, you look professional and everything like that in your response, people are going to be able to tell that if someone is just kind of blowing off some steam and, like Dave was saying, really just wanting to be heard. So it looks like we're actually a little bit past the top of the hour. So there are a few questions. There might be actually some more that we didn't get to, probably about 10 in this list. But we'll go through and we're going to answer those. What we're going to do is we'll provide a link in the follow-up email that also has the recording. There'll be a link to the community, and we're going to spend the next few business days working to get as many of those questions answered. So you'll want to click on that link in the next couple of days to find the additional answers.
And Steph, just so we don't forget, if people have the time now, head over to our Instagram channel, because Jen is going to be on there talking about a lot of what we talked about here today, and answering more of your questions. And so we'll send this list over to her. But if you want to ask something specific, feel free to jump over to the Constant Contact Instagram channel as well.
Yes, I almost forgot about that, Dave.
3:15. Yeah, that's starting at 3:15, I believe. So
yes.
Jump on over there.
So she'll be answering more of those questions, and any that she doesn't get to, we will get those answered for you and get them posted on our community. So Dave, I want to thank you for providing your advice and your expertise with our audience today. And all of you in the audience, thank you so much for participating and joining us today. I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye now.